Welcome to the Wellness on Tap podcast with your host, Dr. Debs Eastwood.
So, that's interesting, isn't it? So you've been all over the place. Some of the places that you've been are familiar to me as well, like Sheffield Children's Hospital that we just mentioned, but in different roles. Yeah, so I'm dying to find out more about why we just clicked and you are sitting here today, because this is a journey of discovery for me as well. And I'm really interested and excited to do this. I never script anything on this podcast anyway, because I am a genuinely curious person and I love stories and I like to be able to listen and hear what people have got to say. And so, yeah.
It's very exciting. I think, I've, and those are just a couple of places. When I said I was, no fixed abode, is that an explorer, an adventurer. I've been incredibly fortunate to have visited and lived in and had experience of lots of places in the world that you probably wouldn't go on holiday.
Ooh.
My dad was an agricultural consultant and he used to work, most of his adult life, he worked in other countries. And so we used to, and where he worked, there weren't schools. So my sister and I both came to boarding school in England. And then we used to just fly out to wherever they were in the holidays. And I thought, as a child, I thought that was completely normal. I thought that, because quite a few other kids at school did something, their parents did similar things. So it was no big deal at school.
Yeah.
There were many of us who flew to different countries. And so I grew up thinking that it was a perfectly normal thing to do, to fly unaccompanied all over the world for your school holidays.
From a relatively early age?
10.
That was you and your sister together. Was she younger or older?
She's younger than me. Yeah, we used to fly together. She was obviously from 10 to 13. When I was between 10 and 13, I did it by myself because she was still at home. So usually there would have been a junior school, an American school, or some kind of school up until, but no secondary education.
Right. Okay, I'm with you.
So so I went to, I think my last primary school was an international school in East Pakistan, which became Bangladesh.
Wonderful. Very well travelled then.
Yes. And still, what's interesting is that although I did a lot of travel, I still love it. I love the atmosphere of an airport. I know it's not quite as glamorous as it used to be, is it? But I'm always curious about, I wonder where all those people are going. And any opportunity to travel, I'm your woman.
And you just moved recently as well?
Just moved north from Abingdon, where I've lived for the last 20 years, to Ollerton in Newark.
Wonderful.
So that's a whole new chapter. Yeah.
Great stuff. Great stuff. And there's a little airport near there. There's one in Nottingham, in Tollerton. So you might see some of the little planes flying around there if you're ever pining for an airport kind of feel. And then there's Gamston, which is Retford.
And there's East Midlands. Where's East Midlands?
East Midlands is the big one. Yeah, it's not a million miles away from Nottingham
so
either. Yeah. Yes.
We're well served for airports. Yeah.
Yes.
Trains. I've recently become a member of the senior rail card holder community. And I love the fact that I can get on. So I'm exploring trains because it's really nice, isn't it, to be able to and Newark is great. I can be in London in an hour and a quarter.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
King's Cross, straight in. Thank you very much.
Does the train come from here, from Donny? I think it might do, because it's about an hour and a half from Doncaster down to King's Cross. Anyway.
Probably. Yes, it does. And it goes up to Edinburgh. So it's like, because I lived in Scotland for 25 years and worked at the, what was colloquially known as the Sick Kids in Edinburgh, the Royal Hospital for Sick Children in Edinburgh. I worked there for a long time in another career.
What was that career then when you were up there?
So I trained as a nurse in London at Great Ormond Street and University College Hospital in the olden days when you could do a combined sick children's and general nursing qualification.
Yeah.
So we did a double whammy. So it took longer, but it gave us a dual qualification. And then I got married and went to live in Scotland. And I worked in Berwick-upon-Tweed. I worked in a local cottage hospital, which was absolutely the best training ground you could ever have for a newly qualified, staff nurse. And we used to do orthopaedic surgery on a Monday, general surgery on a Tuesday, gynae on a Wednesday, general on a Thursday, and ENT on a Friday. And we were on 24-hour emergency medical take. So it was full on. Anaesthetist. So it was a GP-run unit, so we had one of our GPs was one of the anaesthetists.
Dual role.
Yeah, one of the other GPs was a surgeon. So it was fascinating, and then we used to have surgeons and anaesthetists who come up from Newcastle, mostly Newcastle, to do lists. So brilliant, absolutely brilliant grounding. We worked really hard, but it was great. I loved it, and then I left when I had my children. So I have 3 sons, and when they went to school, I decided that I wanted to go back into paediatrics proper, and got a job at the Sick Kids in Edinburgh, became a nurse specialist, and did some. So I was one of only 2 in the country. I don't think maybe there's more now, but there were 2 of us, complementary therapies nurse specialists. Oh, wonderful. So we were able to combine reflexology and Reiki and massage as an adjunct to care.
I want to know so much more about that.
Tell me what you'd like to know and I'll tell you.
So you were in a paediatric hospital, so this was for under 18s.
Yes.
Was a lot of your work focused on a particular target group in any way?
It started because I worked in a surgical unit, and we used to get lots of children coming in for surgical management of idiopathic constipation, which is very unglamorous.
Evacs.
Yes. And I was horrified that children were having anaesthetics, surgical procedures for something that I thought that they didn't need to be having.
Yes.
And they were what we would have called sort of revolving door patients. So they would have the procedure, they'd go away again, they'd come back in 8 weeks' time, and we'd do the whole thing again. And I thought there has to be a better way than this. And I had done reflexology many years before, and one of the side effects of reflexology is an increased gut motility. So my brain works in a way that thought, what if a side effect is a positive outcome? It's not a side effect anymore, then, is it?
Absolutely.
And so I wonder if it happens often enough as a side effect to make it a positive outcome. And so I applied for some funding that we had locally in the hospital to do a bit of a pilot study, and we had fantastic results.
Excellent.
And then I said, well, I'd like to do some proper research. That's what I wanted. And in those days, the surgeon had said, well, you can have anything you like. We'll take the ward out for dinner. And I said, no, I don't really want that. What I want is to do a proper research proposal. And they're like, oh, well, that wasn't really what they had in mind.
No.
And at the time, I was applying for some more funding with another consultant who worked with children who had cerebral palsy, and we were doing some massage, and we wanted to do a mobile massage unit, which I wanted to call Feels on Wheels.
Oh, I love that.
I don't think that would go down very well today, would it?
No, but it's a great concept.
And we had done this. I'd done this proper research proposal for the Scottish Executive, and I had misread the funding breakdown. So the funding was for £350,000, and I thought that was per project, not for the whole funding. So my research project proposal came in at £348,000 and 37 pence. And I thought that was absolutely fabulous. So obviously we put it in. We got a letter back from the Scottish government saying, thank you very much for your proposal. We're not going to fund it, but we were really interested in your financial breakdown, and we'd like to have a conversation. So the consultant and I were invited to the Scottish Executive to have a conversation about research. And what they said to me was, this is the head of research at the Scottish office, and she said, we would never fund you, Jenny, even if you'd got the sums right, even if there was £350,000 on the table, we would never fund you because you have no research history.
Do you know?
And so I said, well, how do I get a research history? And she said, well, you become a doctor's research assistant, and you do some research, and in 10 years, in 10 years' time, you'll get a history, and you publish papers. And I said, oh, I haven't got time for all that. I'm far too old. I can't be doing any of that. And she said, well, if you think, she didn't quite put it like this, but this is what she meant. If you think you're so clever, then we do have this funding. It's a research fellowship. It funds PhDs, and it is open to any health professional in Scotland. So it's very hard won. It's open to doctors, anaesthetists, physios, any health professional. So fill your boots if you think you're that good. So I did. I filled my boots and I applied, and I was successful.
Yay!
So I did a fully funded research project on whether we did a randomised control trial, which they said couldn't be done. We did a randomised control trial looking at whether reflexology as an adjunct to care in children with functional constipation made any difference. And it did.
I just love the fact that somebody puts a barrier up and you go, sod that for a game of darts, boom, and bash through it.
There's always a way round. There's always a way round it, isn't there? And the ethics committee, there were lots of battles. The ethics committee it was awful. They were really nasty. And I wanted to talk to the children. I wanted to do a qualitative study as well. And they wouldn't let me do that. They said it was far too invasive.
Right, because having an anaesthetic every 8 weeks is not.
Exactly.
To have that done.
And I went, this might be a bit wacky, but a friend of mine had a friend staying with her who was a shaman, and I was really struggling with the ethics committee. And my supervisor was saying, Jenny, you need to make a decision. Get your act together. You can't fight them forever. You have to make a decision about, are you going to do what they want, or are you going to kind of dig your heels in? And I was really struggling with it. And this friend of mine said, why don't you have a session with a shaman? And I was determined that I wasn't going to be sucked into, but I had this session, and she was utterly brilliant. And she said things, now I'm more used to, more woo, I think is the term, although I don't like that term, but more in tune with the universe. And she said to me, I see, and she didn't know, we'd never met. And she said, I see a table with lots of papers, and it's oak lined and it's very dark. And there are lots of people around this table. And she said, they do not speak your language. They will never speak your language. You will never make them understand. And I was like, oh, well, what am I going to do? And she said, go with them. They are a means to an end. They won't stop you unless you let them. So I was just blown away. There were other things that she said, but that was basically around work. And so the next day I went to see my supervisor, and I said, I've made my decision. I'm just going to do what they want. I'm going to shelve the qualitative study. I'm just going to go straight for the quantitative stuff, and I'm not going to argue anymore. And she was so shocked. And she said, how did you get that? How did you make that decision?
Yeah.
I said to her, I went to see a shaman, and you could just see
her face like, what?
No, what? And I said, I'm at peace with it, and it will be okay. And so we did the study, and later on I became involved with NICE, and I was invited to be the chair of the National Guideline for Paediatric Idiopathic Constipation. And as part of that process, it was a very well-funded, it was a brilliant process. I was very proud to be part of it. It involved patients, it involved everybody who worked in the area, whatever the guideline was. There were representatives on the committee. We had a very tight timeline. It was beautifully done. And I asked NICE if I could involve children, because it was a children's guideline. And they said, well, there's no time and there's no money, but if you can make it work, do it. And so we did. Wonderful. We did a qualitative piece of work with children. And as a result of involving them in the guideline, not just their parents, but the children themselves, we got an additional recommendation that wouldn't have been in the guideline if it hadn't been for their involvement. And it was a pioneering piece of work. The method that we used was then followed in other paediatric guidelines. So I felt that kind of I was vindicated.
Yes.
In the end.
Yeah, you got there from a more circuitous route, but you got there.
So I think circuitous routes, maybe that might be the title of my autobiography if I were to write one, is circuitous routes, because I think many people, we had a plan in those days, didn't it? Certainly at school, we were, you had a career. You trained in that career, and then you stayed in that career until you retired. Yes. For many people, that was the thing.
Yeah, it used to be.
It's not true today, is it?
No, not at all.
And I think many of us have gone on to have different careers, as I have. So, yes, I think there's something fabulous, although sometimes tricky, about circuitous routes.
Mm. Oh, I like the fact that you've coined, adopted that particular phrase, because it sounds very much, it sort of ties in your journey of where you've lived, and things have moved in lots of circles. So,
I have to remember it.
Wouldn't it be good if it was recorded somewhere and you could listen back? And
If only it was recorded and it was part of a thing that I could listen to. Who knew?
Who knew? So what else did you use then in the complementary stuff, and what sort of pushback did you get? So you talked about the reflexology and you mentioned massage that nowadays couldn't be called Feels on Wheels.
I did. I used Reiki. I'm a Reiki practitioner, a Reiki master, and we used that with children and young people who were had life limiting illnesses, and for whom quality of life was really important. And I was. This will make you smile. I was asked to do a talk at a conference of clinicians, and they asked me if I'd talk about Reiki. And of course I said yes without thinking about it, and then thought, these are, dyed-in-the-wool scientists. And
tough audience.
Very tough audience. And I remembered that when I'd first done reflexology, I'd been at a conference and a Reiki master had come to talk to me and had talked to me a little bit about he asked me if I was interested in Reiki. And my response was, I'm a scientist. I'm a scientist. I need to understand. And he was brilliant because he just looked at me and he smiled, and I'll never forget it. He put his hand on my shoulder and he said, in your own time. And and of course, later on, I discovered it and the power, and that we don't need to understand how it works. We just need to accept that it does
and feel it.
So I was really struggling with how I could present at this conference. And one of my patients was a 15-year-old girl who was so terrified of dying in her sleep that she was unable to sleep alone. And her mother had been sleeping on a camp bed in her bedroom in order to provide support. And I had been doing some Reiki with her and taught her to do some Reiki for herself so that she could manage. And I thought the best thing to do, so I asked her if she would just, a bit like we're doing now, if she would just talk to me and tell me what her experience of our working together had meant for her. And I transcribed it, and I was hoping that she would be able to come to the conference with me, but she wasn't well enough. And so I read out what she had said to the conference, and there wasn't a dry eye in the audience, because what it had given her was the ability to manage her life her way. And she felt that it had given her a sense of controlling the uncontrollable.
Yeah.
So I was incredibly grateful to her for sharing that story. And there wasn't a better way of doing it, really, I don't think. And I felt incredibly blessed that the clinic that I ran at Sick Kids was always full. We got great results, and it was seen as if there were consultants who may have been skeptical at the beginning, they weren't after very long. And so Wonderful. I had a really good relationship with all of the consultants, and from a kind of clinical perspective, they no longer had us. We had no surgery. No surgery was done for the management of constipation. The surgical waiting list had gone.
That's amazing.
Their waiting lists had gone. They all came to me. They knew that if I was stuck with something, that I was clinically able to kind of make that decision and go, you know, I think that actually there's something else going on here. Can I ask your opinion? So we had a brilliant relationship of mutual respect, and it worked. It worked for me. It worked for the patients and the families, and it worked for them. So it was a win-win-win situation, really.
And that is where my whole mission is trying to get to, but in a more expansive way. I mean, my absolute dream is to combine the best of the NHS with the best of complementary and alternative therapies, instead of them being, in most cases, in two completely separate silos.
Yeah. And
I mean, why does it have to be like that when an example that you've just spoken about demonstrates that working it together is so beautiful?
And I think that I understand why at the beginning of, you know, the NHS that think life was much simpler then.
Mm-hmm.
And we divided the, you know, the body into systems because for ease, didn't we? And in our quest for perfection and healing everything, we forgot that actually they're all connected.
Yeah. They don't work in isolation, do they?
No. And I remember when my mum, my late mum, who had some health issues, and she'd had a spinal fusion, and as a result of being in hospital, had acquired MRSA and was really, 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 really sick. And she also had diabetes. And I remember they were trying to heal her wound, and she had to have this special wound dressing done. And the wound dressing was always done between 12:30 and 2:30. And so more often than not, she was away from the ward when lunch was served. And so they would put her tray down in her room, although she wasn't there, and then they would take it away again. And at no point did anybody seem to, well, until I mentioned it, made the connection that her staggering weight loss of like 2 stone in 3 weeks was because she was actually nutritionally compromised. And one of the responses was, "Oh, but we're not here to manage her diabetes. We're here, we're managing her wound." And it's like, yes, but the two are integrated. You can't manage one without the other. And that separation of our whole being, I feel very strongly about whole being. And we see it not just in health, we see it in workplace. You know, people talk about work-life balance like they're two separate entities, but your work is part of your life. They're not two separate things, are they?
No,
that you somehow have to
not.
juggle. Well, we do juggle. But that whole being, I think we've lost that sense of whole being. And as the NHS has got more complicated, and we've done, you know, medical science is just phenomenal, isn't it? In the strides that we've made. And I remember when I was a little girl that if you had a diagnosis of, you know, cancer, I mean, it was an automatic terminal.
Yeah, and normally very quickly.
And now we see, you know, amazing results. But I do think with the complexity, we haven't always had honest conversations about what's possible, what's probable, what's available, because it's a bottomless pit, isn't it? You could pour every cent that we have into the health service and there would still not be enough.
No, I completely agree. And I can get very political about this and say, you know, I think Big Pharma's got a lot to answer for. I think the way The government promotes junk food, which is not food. To call it food is completely a misnomer, which feeds into making us more unhealthy. Those two have got an awful lot to answer for, in my opinion. And I realise I may well have put a bullet on, a target on my back, but I'm not afraid to speak out about it because I think more people need to. I think it's something that a large number of us actually know, but aren't speaking about. But what you were saying about not treating the whole person, that is the whole reason why we are sitting here on these sofas today. That is the whole reason for the existence of this podcast, was that I saw that with my little brother when he was on an intensive care in central London. And he was treated for the multiple myeloma that had put him there, or rather, yes, he was. His markers went from sky high to nothing with just a couple of rounds of treatment. Once that had happened, he was still suffering with the fact that he had had this myeloma for probably a year or so and had otherwise been quite healthy. COVID struck and he could not get access to the treatments. And because he was really healthy, he kept getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. It was his 5th blue light admission, 2 of which had come direct from the GP surgery. She didn't even send him home, where he finally got admitted and started on the pathway towards treatment. But by then, the myeloma had caused so much damage in his body with the proteins it kicks off. It had knackered his heart and it had knackered his kidneys. So they treated the cancer. Yep, great, thank you. But that, it was kind of irrelevant. What they needed to do was treat the damage that his lack of access to services had caused. But because the numbers had been treated and they knew, they could see this protein that was ruining his kidneys and his heart. Can't know anything about that. The vision of the whole person, losing weight, hooked up to all the machines, becoming anxious, becoming delirious, becoming paranoid. Irrelevant. Can't do anything about that. And that was when I started looking for alternatives. And this podcast is the result of trying to speak to people. So I hear you, is what I'm saying. Completely hear you that the whole person needs to be at the root of it. And I'm delighted to hear about your success stories, because that helps me to then go into my departments with the clinicians that I work with day to day and say, come on, here are some actual evidence-based things that you can look at and say, this works. What are you stopping for? If you're only interested in money, it's cut down waiting lists. That saves money that you can direct somewhere else. Do you know what I mean? You don't have to be interested in the woo if you don't want to. That doesn't matter. Just see what it's doing. See the outcome. Wonderful.
Absolutely. And I think that our need to understand sometimes gets in the way of you said it right at the beginning, and I love it. Curiosity is one of my company values. So curiosity is such a big deal for me. And I think the what if question, what if we tried it? What if we had a go? What if we recognise? Because if my brain hadn't worked in such a way, because it wasn't anything new, I was just looking at it from a different perspective. Yeah. What if a side effect isn't a side effect? If it happens often enough, then it becomes a positive outcome. So sometimes it's just looking at things differently, isn't it?
Totally.
Having a different perspective and saying, well, what if we tried, asking questions, being curious. And I think there's a danger both in health and in education that lack of curiosity and doing things because we've always done it that way. This is how we do it. And we've always done it that way. So why would we do it differently? And it means that we miss
much.
Yeah, we miss a trick, or more than one trick, or a few tricks. And we go down an incredibly narrow route when actually that whole being and thinking of people, because if you're causing, and I know NICE gets a lot of bad press, but one of the things that we used to look at is if you're giving somebody a really expensive drug that is incredibly targeted to that person, we have to look at the cost benefit.
Yeah.
So it might, and those are the conversations we don't often have, do we? And it is hard to understand, but is the benefit worth the cost? If it gives you 3 more weeks, but actually means that those 3 weeks you are lying on a sofa, unable to do anything but exist, is that the best use of that treatment? And could that money be spent in other ways? Absolutely. And I think those are the conversations that can be challenging to have, and we don't always have them in an apolitical way, because the NHS can be used as a kind of political potato, isn't it? It's like
absolutely.
Chucked from one.
Oh yes. And I mean, add a little bit onto what you just said, but I don't want to detract from it, because what you said segues beautifully into what you're doing now. But just to add in an example, if that drug again gave that person 3 weeks, but in that 3 weeks they were able to put all their affairs in order, touch base with whoever was important to them in their lives, tick any boxes that they needed ticking, good value for money, in my opinion.
Absolutely, and and there's a fabulous book, you've probably read it, called With the End in Mind. Catherine Mannix, Dr. Mannix, and she is a palliative care consultant, and she talks again, tricky conversations. The premise of her book are conversations that she has had with many patients over the years, and we don't talk about good endings, and we often, and for years I felt that in the medical profession we were trained, certainly those of us who were trained in the olden days, death was seen as a failure, and actually I'm not sure. I don't agree with that. I think sometimes it's failure, but often it's a natural course of events, and we've stopped talking about it out loud, and we tend to only have those potentially challenging conversations when it's really close. And one of the things the book talks about is having those conversations when you're much further away, when you're not staring death in the face, but that it's somewhere in the future. But we know it's a certainty. It is going to happen. And I think that we lost my mum just over a year ago, and it was sudden, it was unexpected. But because we had conversations previously when she'd been close to the edge on other occasions, because knowing what somebody wants and understanding their wishes and being comfortable talking about it makes, when you're in that hideous aftermath, the instant aftermath, it does help.
Yeah, massively.
And I think being able to have conversations when you're not imminently facing dying is actually a really, really helpful thing to do. And this book is a wonderful. It doesn't sound like it's a wonderful book. I highly recommend reading it. You'll cry, but in a good way, because it demonstrates that actually conversations. So often we don't have the conversations that we need to have in time.
Yes, I completely agree. I mean, as an anaesthetist, when I was still working in the intensive care unit, which I haven't done for a few years now, well, I had many of those conversations with the patients where they were capable of having them, but certainly with relatives, next of kin, friends, family, etc., etc. Many of them. And a particular one, it was a gentleman who came in on Christmas Day night. I was working the night shift, and this was in resus, so not in intensive care. And he had suffered for a long time with his health, and I could see it the second I walked in. He'd had enough, and his family were, doing what family does in supporting him and bolstering him, and, you'll be fine, and we've got this, and blah, blah, blah. And it gives me goosebumps, because I asked him, I just looked him in the eye, and I asked him, what do you want? And he reached out and put his hand on my arm and told me I was the first person who'd ever asked him that. And he said exactly that. I've had enough. My life's been great. Everything's sorted. This is what I want. And he told me what he wanted me to do. And I said, yeah, I can do that. So I wrote him, as it was called then, a DNA CPR. It's now a respect form. I wrote that out. I prescribed him palliative medications so that as and when he became symptomatic, he would be as comfortable as could possibly be. I had a chat with his daughter that was there. And funnily enough, one of his granddaughters was there as well. And the following morning, when we were ready to hand over to the day team on the intensive care unit, one of the new nurses came up to me and said, thank you for what you did last night. And I'm like, okay, what did I do? I'm sorry, I don't know you. We've not met yet. She goes, that was my granddad that you spoke to. What you have done for my mum, she wasn't the granddaughter that was there, it was a different granddaughter. And she says, what you've done for my mum, as well as for him, is remarkable. She goes, because you have taken off all the pressure away from her. And so that family, without me knowing, without me realising that's what I was doing, I'd given them the ability to talk more freely than they'd talked in years and to talk realistically. And he had about another 72 hours with family and had what I would call a good death.
Good ending.
Yeah, on his terms. And the family were more at ease.
And it's back to that whole being, isn't it?
Difficult conversation as well, yeah.
But also that whole being about actually dying well.
Yes.
And that these, I say, Dr. Manitz's books are just fabulous. And it's dying well is part of that whole being, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It's leaving the world, and we don't talk a lot about the natural process. We don't talk about lots of things that are difficult. And we were talking earlier about you can be clear and kind at the same time, and when people understand what's going on and how how their bodies work, and what they're thinking and what they're feeling, all of those things, as a whole being, we take that into consideration. Then I think we're onto a winner. Mm. So thank heavens for your podcast.
That is wonderful. And back to where I said we're going to segue in nicely to what you're doing now. What we've sort of been chatting about the last few minutes are really all about having those awkward conversations, aren't they? So you transitioned from being a nurse, solving those problems, into being a business owner.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I have a company called Jenuineconsulting. It's a people development company. And my specialist area of interest is self-awareness and understanding. So personality, how our personality traits get in our way all actually work well for us. And when we understand what they're about, then actually we can make them work for us. And how we are then, when we understand ourselves, it helps us then understand others who may be different from us. And it enables us to have those conversations that we're not always willing, able, feel comfortable having.
Yes. I can tell that comes from a having difficult conversations background in whatever walk of life. I mean, in your case, it was nursing, wasn't it?
And I think as a parent, you have many difficult conversations. I have 3 grown-up sons. I am divorced, so my husband, after 24 years of marriage, decided he'd had enough, and so that was a bolt from the blue. And I think many people, it is rare that in your life there aren't bumpy patches.
Absolutely.
Or things don't go as you had planned, and I think the measure of human endurance is phenomenal, isn't it? But you don't know how you can cope with things until you have to. And even if it's not from choice, and there are many situations that I've found myself in over the years where I've thought, well, I wasn't expecting that. That's one of my favourite phrases. I wasn't expecting that. So what am I going to do now? And as you said, back to that circuitous routes, you never know what's going to happen. Nobody ever told us that life was going to be fair, did it? So I think that the ability to have conversations, and if we think often, if in our heads we think they're going to be tricky, then they are, because we've already kind of made a decision.
That's the way it's going to be.
The way it is. Whereas if we can approach it as, this is just a conversation, I'm curious, I'm open, I'm aware of my body, I'm also aware of my my feelings, my spirit, I'm aware of my whole being, and that I may react to something somebody says, not with my head, but with my gut or my heart, and that reaction might be different depending on whereabouts I'm feeling it. So you're right. I think my love of conversation has been built up by many, many years of hard practice and some spectacular failure.
But we learn from them. If we don't fail, we can't change what we're doing, can we?
No.
And we can't learn.
And I think, so what I do now is help, people have conversations that they've either avoided being, or they don't know how to have, and whether that's in hospital settings, doing complaints management, whether it's in corporate settings, helping teams understand each other better, or whether it's my latest mother-in-law, that in-law relationship that is notoriously complex and that can have incredibly sad consequences if you don't have those conversations. That cutting off of ties and loss is really something that I like to help people avoid if they can.
Yeah. Well, I'm very lucky that my 3 children have 2 different fathers. So I was married to my son's dad, and I am still very much in touch with the parents. We see each other, we message each other, and so, they were my in-laws, and I'm very blessed with that. I can't say the same about my girls' parents purely and simply because they're no longer with us. So no slight against them whatsoever. It's just physically impossible. But yeah, I feel very blessed in that, and I do appreciate very much that there can be significant difficulties. I've seen big examples with friends and other family members, where it can cause an awful lot of heartache.
Yes, and I think as with each generation, it's that intergenerational thing, isn't it? With each generation, the world changes, and boundaries change and things change. And what was okay when I was, had toddlers, my sons were toddlers, is different now. Things change, things move on, the world changes, the world moves on. And I think that we have more blended families.
Yes, indeed.
So there are many blended families. So as an example, my niece, her partner, his parents are both divorced and remarried. And so, that's potentially 2 mother-in-laws at the same. And that's what people do. They go, oh, and it might be fabulous and easy, but it might be, there's a fabulous film, isn't there, with Jane Fonda called The Monster-in-Law. It's a great movie if you haven't seen it. Well, it's a great movie for me because it absolutely, and there's nobody better than Jane Fonda encapsulating all the things. She's a mother, a single mother of a son, who then subsequently wants to get married. And it's brilliant because she falls into all of the traps that were beautifully written into the movie that demonstrate why it's easy to be thought of as a monster-in-law.
Yes.
And it's tongue-in-cheek, but it's like, actually, there is when it happens to people in real life, and it's not in a movie, it's hard and complicated. And with every generation, it seems to get more complicated as we have, blended families and people living in different countries and different areas. And the days when people stayed within a 10-mile radius are gone for many people.
Yeah, that is true.
So I think, and again, it's back to that self-awareness. Are you able to have those conversations early? My relationship with my mother-in-law was challenging, and I wasn't self-aware enough at the time to be able to have those conversations that I should have had. Don't like the word should, but I needed to have. And when I tried, and failed, you then stop trying after a while because you think that they're not landing, and so you make the best of it, and insidiously it erodes your confidence and your ability to be who you are. So I think it has a personal impact as well.
Because it would make you behave differently, wouldn't it? Which changes your brain chemistry at a fundamental level.
Absolutely. And because it happens so gradually, you almost don't notice until it's gone. Well, until it's hidden. So I talk a lot about reclaiming brilliance, because I believe everybody's born brilliant, and it gets buried over time. And that's certainly part of what happened to me, was that burying of brilliance, trying to keep an even keel, trying to keep everybody happy. I became an arch negotiator, but again, that's not living as a whole being. That's living as a part being.
Yeah, and always walking around on eggshells.
It's exhausting.
Yeah, you can't do it effectively long term.
No, it's not. It's no soul shriveling is what I describe it as.
Oh, I like that. I've never heard that, but that's so pictorial, so visual. Yeah,
and soul shriveling. It's not a great place to be.
No.
And so So part of what I do now is say unshrivel souls, although I haven't ever said that, but that's kind of what it is. Yeah, helping people reclaim their brilliance and understand that they can be, unapologetically whole beings. Whole beings are what we need in the world, aren't they?
Totally.
We need whole beings.
We do. If we're all walking around as just a shadow of ourselves, then we're almost being selfish. We're not giving the world who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were in the presence of quite a few of them yesterday. When you encounter a whole being, because you go, oh, wow, you can, you get a sense of, even if you can't put it into words, even if you can't articulate what it is, You
just know, you feel it.
Yeah, you feel it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I love that. And I mean, we're all on a journey. They are possibly more evolved in that sense. They're further ahead on the journey. Maybe they're not so far ahead on different parts of it, but on that particular path, I think it was described yesterday as, the healing for that has been done. The clearing has also been done of all that energy. So there's then space not only to move on, but for your light to shine.
And for new things to come in.
Yes.
I know when I was moving house, I did a lot of clearing out, a lot of decluttering, and I am not ashamed to say that I needed help to do that. I'm emotionally attached to many things, not in a materialistic way, but in an emotional attachment because of the people who gave me them.
Guilty.
Or the story, the story that they have for me, and so I needed an objective friends, because there was more than one, to help me release them, let them go, which was brilliant. And I thought I'd done such a good job until it came to unpacking, and I realised that I'd still got quite a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I think some of the things I'm attached to are not things they would pack up because they're big, like a wardrobe. I mean, come on, But it came from my late mum, and it was something I remember seeing, and, yeah. I think I've actually decided my youngest is moving out in the very near future. And if the wardrobe that we bought for her room doesn't fit, it's one of these super tall ones where you have to measure the height of your ceiling first so that you can, one of these you build flat pack and stand it up. If that won't fit in her new place, I've decided that this wardrobe she can have. So maybe that's me starting to
there you go,
loosen the attachments.
And it was incredibly cathartic, but I knew that I couldn't do it unaccompanied.
Yeah. I moved house 7 years ago, and at first it was like, ooh, I can get rid of that. And I got this skip because I knew there was a load of stuff in the garage, and some of it that had been inherited from previous. And I thought I was going to have to take furniture that I didn't want to take, and so I thought, oh God, maybe a lot of this is going to end up in the skip. Do you know what I mean? I was bit at a time, and then it was like, yes, get it in, chuck it all in. And it was cathartic, and I was actually enjoying. Now I have the words to say I was releasing ties from the past. Then it was just getting rid of stuff. But there's more to it than that.
There is, and I say I have some more to do. And I think when you, whatever stage you're at in your life, when you move on to another stage, you might take things with you, and then you realise that actually you're done with them and you don't need them. But actually the taking them with you is part of that process, isn't it? Part of those exploring, adventuring.
Yes. Which, it makes me think, well, it's been 7 years since I've been there now, and I'm at a phase now where I'm wanting to sort of purge stuff again, which is interesting because we do live in 7-year cycles, don't we, supposedly?
Well, yes. So mine was 20. I'd lived in my last house for 20, so that's nearly 3 7-year cycles,
it is, isn't it? Yeah.
And definitely the death of my mum had had such a huge impact. And it was a friend who came to see me, and I made the decision to move quite quickly, randomly out of nowhere, really. And she said when she came to the house, she said, "Oh, you've already moved in your heart. You've already gone.
Yeah.
The energy in this house has changed, and it's time. It is time."
Yeah.
And I think that I love thinking of our lives in chapters, and some chapters are fat chapters, aren't they? And some chapters are thin.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter the length of the chapter. It's as ever, the quality, the quality of that chapter.
Of the content.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I wish you so much luck with the next stage of your adventure.
So I am incredibly excited about it, and it feels like a really good place to be. And as you said earlier, having done a lot of work, a lot of work, and a lot of releasing, it feels like I'm ready for the next chapter.
Yeah.
Unmasked, whole being, whole and unmasked, is a marvellous, if somewhat vulnerable place to be, but that feels okay.
Yeah.
Which I think is a measure of the work that has been done.
What a wonderful place to be. I wish you all the best.
Thank you, and it's been an absolute joy to talk with you, and I'm sure this won't be the last time our paths cross.
Oh, I'm absolutely certain of it. I'm certain. Thank you so much, my darling.
Oh, it's been lovely. Thank you.